Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the very first adventure that introduced one of literature's most iconic duos. Imagine being thrown into a baffling crime scene with, well, pretty much no clues, only to watch this brilliant mind pull the entire solution from seemingly thin air. This deep dive isn't just a plot summary, it's really about dissecting how extraordinary circumstances forge unforgettable characters, and how a single thread of logic can unravel the most tangled skein, and what it means for the very birth of forensic science and fiction.
Exactly. We're going to explore that initial bewilderment that Dr. Watson experiences, the surprising methods Holmes employs that absolutely challenge conventional thinking of his era, and also the hidden history, the backstory that makes two seemingly unrelated murders just so deeply personal. Get ready to see the world and crime through an entirely new lens, and maybe understand why this story still resonates so much today.
So let's start where it all began, with our narrator, Dr. Watson. We first meet him, and he's a man adrift. He's fresh from the Afghan war, invalided home after being wounded and falling ill. Now he's struggling to make ends meet in London, feeling alone and comfortless, as he puts it. It's a chance encounter at the Criterion Bar with an old acquaintance, Stamford, that completely changes the trajectory of his life.
And Stanford's introduction of a potential flatmate, it comes with this massive warning, doesn't it? This fellow at the chemical laboratory, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, is described as a little queer, an enthusiast in some branches of science, also a first-class chemist with out-of-the-way knowledge. But what truly stands out about Stanford's caution is that anecdote, right, about Holmes beating dissecting room subjects with a stick.
Yeah, to study bruises after death.
Exactly. It immediately hints at a rather unconventional, almost, unsettling scientific mind.
I mean, what a first impression. Then we get the actual meeting, and Holmes is absolutely ecstatic. He's just discovered a reagent that is precipitated by hemoglobin and by nothing else. He declares it the most practical medico-legal discovery for years.
An infallible test for bloodstains.
Right, and he even demonstrates it by pricking his own finger. So what does this immediate scientific breakthrough and Holmes's almost manic glee about it tell us about him and about the story Doyle is setting up?
Well, this blood test, it isn't just a scientific breakthrough within the story. It's really Conan Doyle declaring his intent for Holmes. It establishes him as a character operating at the absolute cutting edge,
Yeah.
so far beyond conventional police methods that he's essentially inventing forensic science right there on the page. He immediately contrasts it with older methods, the clumsy and uncertain ones like the Kogalkum test, which was this unreliable chemical test for blood, or just microscopic examination.
So he's miles ahead already.
Totally. This instant focus on practical application and his, unshakable confidence in his impact defines him as a consulting detective, which was a completely new concept then. It instantly establishes his, let's say, unparalleled authority.
Absolutely. So they discuss sharing rooms at 221B Baker Street. It's almost like a compatibility interview, isn't it? Holmes confesses to smoking strong tobacco, keeping chemicals around, having these periods of extreme silence. Watson, in turn, admits to keeping a bullpup, having shaky nerves, and being, lazy.
A fair exchange of potential annoyance.
Right. And then that first flash of Holmes's genius, he immediately perceives that Watson has been in Afghanistan. Watson is, quite understandably, astonished.
That's just an astonishing feat of deduction for a first meeting, isn't it? It's so quick, so precise. What is it about that particular instance that so perfectly encapsulates Holmes's unique observational process and just sets the stage for everything that follows?
Well, it's all in the detail, isn't it? As Watson settles into 221B, he starts this rigorous, almost anthropological study of this extraordinary man, Sherlock Holmes. And what a subject. Holmes's habits are certainly erratic. Days of intense work at the lab or dissecting rooms, followed by periods just lying on the sofa with a dreamy, vacant expression, barely saying a word. He's described as tall, lean, with sharp and piercing eyes, and hands blotted with ink and stained with chemicals, yet possessed of extraordinary delicacy of touch.
But what's truly fascinating, as Watson discovers, is Holmes's deliberate ignorance. He knows next to nothing about contemporary literature, philosophy, politics. He's even ignorant of the Copernican theory.
Incredible.
And Holmes explains this with his famous brain attic analogy. A man's brain originally is like a little empty attic. You have to stock it with such furniture as you choose. He insists useless facts, like the Earth revolving around the sun, would just elbow out the useful ones relevant to his work.
What a concept. The brain attic isn't just a quirky detail. It's like A profound commentary on focused expertise and maybe the dangers of information overload. Surprisingly relevant today, you know?
Oh, very relevant.
Holmes wasn't just selectively ignorant, he was strategically ignorant, optimizing his mental capacity for what truly mattered to his work. What can we learn about building our own attics of knowledge from this?
It's a masterclass in prioritization, really. For Holmes, knowledge wasn't about accumulation. It was about utility, pure utility. He optimized his mental space, making sure every piece of information served his ultimate goal, solving crimes. This isn't passive ignorance. It's an active, almost militant filtering of data. It's what allows him to synthesize information so rapidly and draw connections others just miss.
And this leads us to finding out about his actual work. Watson, still a bit skeptical, mocks an article Holmes wrote called The Book of Life. Watson calls it ineffable twaddle, a theory from an armchair lounger, saying he'd like to see the writer try his deductions on the underground. Holmes's calm reply. As for the article, I wrote it myself.
Such a brilliant moment, a total mic drop.
Right.
Absolutely. And that moment is everything. It's the reveal of his unique profession, a consulting detective.
Mm-hmm.
Scotland Yard's best, Lestrade and Gregson, they come to him when they're at fault, when they're stuck. This sets the stage for his perceived superiority and also, crucially, that dynamic where Holmes is often overlooked by the official police, even when he solves it all.
Yeah, they get the credit later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He then elegantly demonstrates his science of deduction by walking Watson through how he knew he'd been in Afghanistan. It's a brilliant display of his backward reasoning. He dismisses Poe's Dupin and Gaboriau's Lecoq, asserting his own unparalleled talent.
And it backs it up instantly. Identifies a passerby outside their window, a retired sergeant of Marines, just by observation, before the man even reaches the door. He sees the blue anchor tattoo, the military bearing, the regulation-side whiskers, that sort of air of self-importance.
It's not just a parlor trick. It's a practical demonstration of his theories in action. Real-world application.
So the ink is barely dry on Holmes's brilliant demonstration when their quiet morning is just shattered by a summons from Scotland Yard, plunging them right into the heart of London's next great mystery.
And what a mystery it is. A letter arrives from Tobias Gregson of Scotland Yard detailing a bad business at 3 Lauriston Gardens, Brixton. A gentleman named Enoch J. Drebber from Cleveland, Ohio, has been found dead in an empty house. No wound, no signs of robbery, just blood marks and, well, a complete mystery.
Holmes's reaction is initially this kind of feigned apathy, isn't it? Claiming laziness, bemoaning that the official police will take all the credit anyway.
But the fit for work, that spark, it quickly takes over. He urges Watson to grab his hat, and they're off to the scene.
At this desolate house, Holmes's meticulous nature is immediately apparent. He doesn't just rush in like the others. Instead, he scrutinizes the muddy pathway outside, noting the cab marks, the footprints. He even calls out Gregson for letting the scene get trampled.
If a herd of buffaloes had passed along, there could not be a greater mess. Classic Holmes.
Exactly. What stands out about his initial approach compared to the police, and why is that so critical to his success?
It's his respect for the scene, for the raw data. He knows the ground, the dust, it holds secrets. While Gregson and Lestrade are looking for obvious signs of violence, a weapon, a struggle. Holmes is looking for any sign, however tiny. Inside, Drebber's body is a grim sight. Features contorted in horror and coruscantly hatred, giving him this singularly simious and ape-like appearance. The room is bare. Gregson and Lestrade confirm no wound. But Holmes immediately deduces the blood on the floor must belong to a second individual, presumably the murderer. He also notes the case reminds him of a past one, emphasizing nothing new under the sun, finds patterns everywhere.
And as the body is removed, that crucial detail emerges. A plain gold wedding ring just tinkles to the floor. Lestrade shouts, "There's been a woman here!" Gregson says it complicates matters, but Holmes simply asks, "You're sure it doesn't simplify them? Why is this ring such a pivotal yet totally misunderstood clue?"
Well, it's pivotal because it's out of place. It's a key anomaly. Lestrade and Gregson see woman. They jump to a simple motive, maybe jealousy or a lover's quarrel. Holmes sees something far more complex. A man's body in a bare room with a woman's wedding ring that doesn't belong to him. It screams message or motive beyond the obvious. The contents of Drebber's pockets yield more clues, too. His identity, some cash, that pocket edition of Boccaccio's Decameron with Joseph Stangerson written inside.
Ah, Stangerson. That name becomes important.
Very. Plus letters implying he was about to return to New York. Gregson has telegraphed Cleveland, but typically not for the crucial specifics, much to Holmes's clear disdain.
And then comes Lestrade's big moment, his triumphant discovery. The word racy scrawled in blood-red letters on the wall. He believes it's unfinished, meant to be Rachel, implicating a woman.
And Holmes's reaction. He bursts into laughter, which clearly irritates Lestrade no end.
What does this specific moment reveal about the fundamental difference in Holmes's intellect compared to someone like Lestrade?
Oh, it's the chasm between superficial assumption and deep knowledge, isn't it? Lestrade immediately jumps to the simplest, most obvious, and, well, ultimately wrong conclusion. Holmes, with his brain attic filled with useful knowledge, instantly recognizes Rache as the German word for revenge, not Rachel at all. He then pulls out his magnifying glass and tape measure, meticulously examines the room, gathers gray dust, measures marks which were entirely invisible to others. He even notes the faint scratches on the plaster from the writing itself. He's not just looking, he's seeing, analyzing.
And as he leaves, he delivers that devastatingly precise description of the murderer to the completely baffled detectives. A man, more than 6 feet high, was in the prime of life, had small feet for his height, wore coarse, square-toed boots, and smoked a Trecanopoly cigar.
And don't forget the horse. Came here with his victim in a 4-wheeled cab, which was drawn by a horse with 3 old shoes and 1 new one on his off foreleg.
Incredible detail. In all probability, the murderer had a florid face, and the fingernails of his right hand were remarkably long. He curtly adds the cause of death was poison, and then with that Parthian shot, as Watson calls it, clarifies Rache is German for revenge. How does he manage to pull such specific details from seemingly nothing?
It's the sheer power of observation and synthesis. His confidence is just absolute. On the cab ride to find Constable Rance, he explains his reasoning for the cab, and horse marks no rain for a week, so the tracks are clear. The new shoe, 2 sets of footprints showing 2 individuals arrived by cab at night. He deduced the murderer's height from his stride length and the height of the Rache writing on the wall. And the cigar type from the ash, he even mentions he'd written a monograph on identifying different cigar ashes.
A monograph on cigar ashes? Of course he did.
It's not guesswork. It's cold, hard scientific conclusion drawn from seemingly insignificant minutiae that others ignore.
The interaction with Constable John Rance is classic Holmes, too. He reveals he knows everything Rance did at the scene, including how Rance got scared and retreated to the gate, and the drunk chap he encountered loitering nearby. Holmes declares this drunk man is the man who holds the clue, the man whom we are seeking.
And his next move to catch the murderer is clever, placing a found advertisement in the newspapers for the wedding ring, but using Watson's name and address. He expects the man in the brown coat, our florid friend with the square toes, to come for it. He reasons the ring must be invaluable to the killer, probably dropped when stooping over the body. The killer likely returned, saw the police, and feigned drunkenness to observe without suspicion.
So the trap is set. Watson even cleans his service revolver, just in case. Holmes receives a telegram from America confirming his suspicions about Drebber's past, which only solidifies his confidence. But then an unexpected visitor arrives. Not the robust, florid-faced man they expect, but a very old and wrinkled woman claiming the ring belongs to her daughter.
Holmes sees through the disguise instantly, doesn't he? He notes her route. The Brixton Road does not lie between any circus and Houndsditch. He knows it's an act. Despite his amusement, he gives her a duplicate ring and follows her.
And this leads to a rare professional stumble for Holmes, right? He's cleverly outwitted. The old woman gives him the slip in a cab, turns out to be a young man, and an active one, too, besides being an incomparable actor.
Sure.
Right. It's a moment of, well, humor and chagrin for Holmes. What does this rare misstep tell us about him, even at his most brilliant? And what about the murderer?
It definitely humanizes Holmes. It's only for a moment. Shows he's not infallible. But maybe more importantly, it makes him realize the murderer is not as lonely as I imagined he was, but has friends who are ready to risk something for him. This definitely ups the ante. It's not just one man anymore.
Right. So the next morning, the newspapers are full of wild theories about the Brixton mystery, political refugees, secret societies blaming the Liberal administration.
Standard media frenzy.
Yeah.
Holmes is highly amused, especially seeing how Gregson and Lestrade are already getting credit for a case they haven't come close to solving.
It's the classic Scotland Yard versus Holmes dynamic, isn't it? Always playing out. Holmes then reveals another tool in his arsenal, his network of Ragged Street Arabs, the Baker Street Irregulars. He employs them for information gathering, declaring you can get more work out of one of those little beggars than out of a dozen of the force. They can go anywhere, hear everything.
They're his eyes and ears on the street. And just then, the dramatic tension ramps up again when Gregson bursts in, proclaiming he's solved the case. He's arrested Arthur Charpentier, the son of Drebber's landlady.
Gregson's theory. Charpentier, protective of his sister Alice, whom Drebber had apparently propositioned and assaulted, followed Drebber, struck him fatally, dragged the body into the empty house. And the Raish and the ring were just tricks to throw the police onto the wrong scent. Seems plausible on the surface, maybe?
Plausible, but wrong. Gregson is basking in his glory, convinced he's got it all wrapped up. But just then, Lestrade arrives, looking disheveled and distraught. He announces a shocking development. Joseph Stangerson.
Drebber's secretary, the name from the book.
Exactly. Stangerson has also been murdered, this time at Halliday's private hotel.
Wow. So how does Stangerson's murder immediately change the entire dynamic of the case? What does it confirm for Holmes?
It immediately connects the two victims, undeniably. It confirms that deeper, more premeditated revenge plot that Holmes had suspected all along. It wasn't just about Drebber. Lestrade reveals the chilling detail. The word ricee is found written in blood above Stangerson's body as well. Consistency. Lestrade also describes a witness, a milk boy, who saw a tall man with a reddish face and brownish coat descending a ladder from Stangerson's window. There's also evidence he washed his hands in the room. And crucially, in Stangerson's pocket, they find a telegram. J.H. is in Europe.
J.H.
And Lestrade also mentions finding a small chip ointment box containing a couple of pills on the windowsill near the body.
And this is the last link for Holmes. He's exultant, declaring his case is complete. Why are these pills the last link for him?
Because they perfectly corroborate his earlier deduction that Drebber was poisoned, not killed by a blow like Gregson thought. It confirms the method. The famous pill test follows. Holmes asks Watson, as a doctor, to examine them. They appear harmless, ordinary. Holmes then tests them on the landlady's ailing terrier, poor dog. The first half pill does absolutely nothing, causing Holmes immense frustration. He doubts himself for a second, but then with a sudden insight he realizes, of the two pills in that box, one was of the most deadly poison, and the other was entirely harmless. A cruel lottery. He tests the other half pill, and the dog dies almost instantly. This confirms the unique, terrible method of the original murder.
So, with that final piece of the puzzle in place, Holmes, now fully in control, explains his reasoning backwards method again. He shows how every detail, no matter how small or seemingly contradictory, fit into his analysis. The cab, the footprints, Drebber's expression of horror, the race inscription, which he saw as a deliberate false flag meant to mislead by implying secret societies, the ring, the cigar ash, the telegram from Cleveland.
It all pointed to a premeditated, deeply personal crime. He'd even deduced Drebber had poison forced upon him, partly from his agitated expression and noticing a slightly sour smell on his lips earlier. He reveals that he telegraphed Cleveland directly, asking specifically about Drebber's marriage history. The reply confirmed Drebber had sought protection from an old rival in love named Jefferson Hope, who's currently in Europe.
Jefferson Hope.
There it is. And the final masterstroke, realizing the murderer was the cabman. A brilliant disguise for tracking his victims and having the means to transport Drebber to that empty house.
And then the dramatic capture. The Baker Street irregulars locate Jefferson Hope, the cabman. Holmes, with Lestrade and Gregson present as witnesses, asks Hope to help him fasten a buckle on a heavy portmanteau. As Hope reaches down, Holmes snaps handcuffs on him, declaring, "Gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mr. Jefferson Hope, the murderer of Enoch Drebber and of Joseph Stangerson." A desperate struggle ensues. Hope is incredibly strong, but he is ultimately subdued.
And with Hope captured, the mystery's final layer peels back. It reveals this stunning, decades-old saga of injustice and relentless vengeance that explains everything. This isn't just about a murder in Brixton. It's about a man's entire life consumed by a singular, burning quest for retribution, rooted deeply in the harsh realities of the American West.
Hope, it turns out, has an aortic aneurysm, a dangerous weakening in a major blood vessel near his heart, and knows he hasn't got long to live. So he calmly agrees to tell his story. He wants to be remembered as an officer of justice, not just a common cutthroat.
And his narrative truly takes us way back, almost 50 years earlier, to the Great Alkali Plain in North America, 1847. It's a harsh, unforgiving landscape. We learn about John Ferrier, a starving wanderer, and his adopted daughter Lucy, found barely alive by a Mormon caravan. This is led by their prophet, Brigham Young. They are taken in, saved, but on the condition they adopt the Mormon creed. They eventually settle in Utah, helping build Salt Lake City. John Ferrier prospers, becomes wealthy, but rigidly refuses to practice polygamy, staying single. Lucy grows up to be, quote, the flower of Utah.
Then Lucy meets Jefferson Hope, a young hunter and prospector, when he saves her from a cattle stampede. It's love at first sight, pretty much instantly, and they become engaged. But their happiness is threatened. Brigham Young himself confronts Ferrier, demanding Lucy marry one of the elect, specifically the sons of two powerful elders, Enoch Drebber or Joseph Stangerson.
The very men he ends up hunting down decades later.
Exactly. This demand is enforced by the sinister, invisible Danite Band, or Avenging Angels, who secretly enforce church laws and punish anyone who dissents. Ferrier and Lucy start seeing numbers scrawled on their house, counting down the days they have to comply. A terrifying warning. Jefferson Hope returns on the very last day. Crawling into their watched house under cover of darkness, they make a desperate escape through the mountains.
But tragedy strikes. Hope goes hunting for food, leaving them hidden. When he returns, he finds John Ferrier murdered, a grave already dug beside him, and Lucy is gone. Taken back to Salt Lake City to be forced into marriage with Enoch Drebber, Lucy just pines away, heartbroken, and dies within a month. Jefferson Hope, consumed by grief and absolute fury, sneaks into her funeral and steals her wedding ring from her dead finger. He vows revenge.
Wow. So how does this seemingly unrelated backstory retroactively illuminate the true nature of the crimes in London? And what themes of justice, or maybe even fanaticism, does Hope's narrative explore?
It completely transforms the context of the murders, doesn't it? It shows how Holmes's deductions, which seem so cold and logical, were actually uncovering this decades-long saga of personal burning retribution, a quest for what Hope saw as justice. Hope dedicates his entire life to revenge. For years, he stalks Drebber and Stangerson across continents, working menial jobs like a human bloodhound, always just behind them. He even gets arrested once, which gives them time to flee to Europe. Finally, he tracks them to London.
And in London, he becomes a cab driver, the perfect cover to keep tabs on them. He describes the night of Drebber's murder, how Drebber, drunk and abusive, ended up in his cab, how Hope drove him to the empty Lauriston Gardens house, how he confronted Drebber, produced the two pills, one poison, one harmless, a method he learned from an old lab janitor, and forced Drebber to choose his fate. He describes Drebber's agonizing death, holding Lucy's wedding ring before his dying eyes.
He admits his nose bled from the sheer excitement and intensity of the moment, and that's when he impulsively wrote "rock" with his own blood. He remembered a newspaper story about a German found dead with that word nearby, thought it might throw the police off. A red herring. He also confesses to Stangerson's murder, entering his hotel room via a ladder he found. Stangerson attacked him first, and Hope stabbed him in self-defense, though he adds grimly that Providence would never have allowed his guilty hand to pick out anything but the poison anyway, had he used the pills again.
He concludes his tale, feeling his work is done. When the police ask about the old woman accomplice who retrieved the ring, he refuses to implicate his friend. He just acknowledges his friend's cleverness in outwitting Holmes that time, loyalty even then. And then, just as the legal process is about to begin, Jefferson Hope dies peacefully in his cell overnight from the aortic aneurysm. A hired judge, as Watson puts it, has taken the matter in hand.
It's an incredibly poetic, almost Shakespearean end to such a tumultuous life driven by vengeance. Holmes reflects on the case's underlying simplicity, despite how complex it seemed to the official police. He reiterates the power of reasoning backwards, starting from the result and working back through the steps. He emphasizes how all the strange details that perplex Lestrade and Gregson actually serve to enlighten him and strengthen his conclusions. They were clues, not complications.
And the ultimate irony, of course, despite Holmes solving the entire mystery from start to finish, the newspapers attribute the smart capture entirely to the well-known Scotland Yard officials, Yost Lestrade and Gregson. Holmes just laughs it off, saying, "That's the result of all our study in Scarlet to get them a testimonial."
Classic Holmes. This deep dive into a study in Scarlet, it really reveals not just the hidden depths of deduction, but the profound, long-lasting impact of past events, past traumas on present-day crimes. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What seemingly insignificant detail in your own life, your own observations, might hold the key to some future understanding or mystery? What subtle signs do we miss every single day? And what could we unlock if we only honed our powers of observation just a little bit, like Sherlock Holmes?
A fascinating thought. Until next time, keep those eyes and minds open.